Those were scenes from New York's Ground Zero in the days following the September 11th attacks. That debris and the unending search for bodies. Now, a decade later, efforts to identify human remains recovered from that site still continue. As part of our ongoing coverage, remembering the events of 9/11, David Common tells us how new science is being used to help some families find closure.
Russell Mercer has no grave for his son Scott. Instead, he comes here, a carefully tended to garden, honoring the young firefighter who was in one of the twin towers when it came crashing down.
We had no body. In a Christian church, you have to have a body to be buried. There was no remains. You couldn't bury an empty casket.
Almost 3,000 people died that day. Nearly half of those victims were never identified or even found. A decade on, Russell Mercer still waits for a phone call telling him even a small piece of his son has been recovered.
It's very hard on my wife, very emotional, and it tears you down, and it wears you down, and it tears at your heart every day.
His remains could be in here, a giant repository for over 9,000 fragments recovered from Ground Zero. Bits of human tissue often fused with debris, or more often shards of bone that have been too badly damaged to produce a DNA profile. But that may change. Inside this sterile lab at New York's medical examiner's office, major advances in DNA technology have been pioneered, giving new hope to identifying the unidentified.
We were down there receiving our orders.
Mark Desire runs the lab and knows firsthand the devastation of that day.
Debris from the South Tower fell down on us. We didn't quite make it far enough away, and that shattered my foot and concussion. And
you mean the wave of debris? You actually got buried in a way? You got knocked down by it?
Yep. Yeah.
Mark and his team escaped injured, but alive, rushed away in a police boat after the tower's collapse.
I saw the North Tower go down.
It is a constant reminder of all those who didn't escape, and the 1,100 victims never ID'd. But inside his labs, technicians toil on. 10 years on, they are having increasing success.
Majority of the matches come back to someone who's already previously been identified. So there are on the occasion where we've identified a new victim. We've had one so far this year. There were two back in 2009, but there's been 32 since this procedure has been modified.
Each month, technicians test 400 samples that have defied identification in the past. In a process similar to this, they remove the tiniest bits of bone and grind them into a powder. This machine then inserts a series of chemicals, allowing techs to build a DNA sequence. Several Canadians work in these labs, sometimes sifting through the raw debris of Ground Zero.
Looking through all like the concrete and looking for specific personal effects, anything that looks like bone, whether or not animal or human, and just going through piece by piece and looking to see if we find anything personal.
And did that happen?
Yeah, not to me specifically. I think I found a couple credit cards, but I know some people had found a few things.
New York has no plans to stop searching. Even a decade later, their plodding work brings comfort to the still grieving families. Russell Mercer believes this garden is only a temporary place for his son Scott's memory to live on. And one day he hopes to get that call to give Scott a proper burial, something to lay his son to rest and ease his own suffering.
It's very difficult to talk about. It's hard, very hard. Cut down in prime of his life. Cut down in a prime of his life. What can I tell you? We're waiting, we're patient, and at the end, we will definitely receive something of Scott.
David Common, CBC News, New York.
In the coming days, David Common will give us a tour of Ground Zero and the 9/11 Memorial, where some of the unidentified remains will be kept. And on September 11th, we'll have full coverage of the 10-year anniversary of the attacks with a special edition of The National from New York City.